Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss fantasy Formula 1. This is my team selection video for Abu Dhabi, the last one of the season, so please leave a like for the final team selection video of the year. Do not miss as well the final deadline stream tomorrow, usual time, 2 hours before the deadline, 2 hours before quali starts. That's when I'll be live right here for the final deadline stream of the year, the final tip of the week, the final tier lists, the final team submissions, and the final team lock. Thank you so much for being with me this year. I can't wait for next year. But we have a lot to talk about because a lot of things happen. I'm also sorry that this is quite late, long day at work. So I've just now gotten back and seen a bunch of things that we need to discuss. So let's talk about that and what my moves are looking or where I'm looking to move my assets for the final race of the season. But of course, if you haven't already, please, I don't ask for much here on this channel, and I know I'm about to say a word that people do not like to hear that's gonna make you fast forward or click off, but there is a survey. So please stay with me. I know, scary word. There's a survey top of the description for a end of season sort of summary for F1 Fantasy made by the FanAmp guys. And if you fill that out, that is like the thing that F1 Fantasy, the actual F1 Fantasy will look at the end of the season to sort of, you know, value or do a little review of the year in F1 Fantasy. So if there's anything about the game that you like or dislike, your one chance to make an impact is to fill out the survey below. I cannot stress to you how important it is that we get as many people as possible to fill out the survey, because the more number of people we have, the more reliable the data is, which means it's more likely that F1 Fantasy is going to listen to us and remove the -20 for DNFs. Now, I'm very biased to what I want changed. I want some things changed. Of course, I still love this game. There are some things I want changed. Below the link to the survey is a video where I filled out the survey and talked about everything that I thought should change. I will, of course, also make a video showing the results of the survey after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix has concluded. But you have until Sunday to do it, so you have to do it now. Do it now. Let's talk about my team in Abu Dhabi. So we have two main things to discuss, really, but it's really the same thing, right? And that is the grid penalties in Abu Dhabi, because surprisingly, we have a few. Both the Williams drivers, the Williams duo, take grid penalties for gearbox changes. Now, this is a 5-place grid penalty for both Colapinto and Albon, which definitely makes them better options in my eyes, both of them. I know people are scared of Albon, but, you know, his good qualifying, and he has been outperforming Colapinto in qualifying recently. Him putting that car in P12 has not been good for him. Him being P12, getting moved down to P17, as long as he stays out of the wall, I think that could be very good for Albon, and that could be a very good score, and I think he's due one based on how fast the Williams has been, like the car has actually been at this tail end of the season without really having any results to show for it. Colapinto as well has been relatively poor in qualifying recently, definitely been beaten by Albon, and if he continues the trend of going out in Q1, that means he'll start from the back at P20. Now, I know how he did that last time and DNF'd, but that was really not his fault. And I do think he would have been in for quite a haul had he been able to continue the race last time, considering how many other DNFs there were in Qatar, right? So I think both of the Williams drivers are actually good options here, not just Colapinto. Definitely better than both Show and Bottas. The Bottas one is iffy, right? Because Bottas is, you know, I think Bottas is likely to get driver of the day if he puts in a half-decent performance, especially if he's P10. If Bottas gets a point, a single point, I can guarantee you he's getting driver of the day. So I do think if I were to sort of split up the driver of the day possibilities in Abu Dhabi, I do think Bottas is at the top of that. So maybe I don't want to transfer Bottas out for Albon if my money can afford it, but I do still think that both of these are really good options. The second penalty that we have to talk about is, of course, Leclerc, right? 10-place grid drop for Abu Dhabi, which is massive. Now, Leclerc was top of the FP1 standings, not top of the FP2 standings. But you know what a qualifying demon he is. He's usually very good in qualifying, and I expect that to be the case in Abu Dhabi as well. And if he can put it top 3 in qualifying, which is definitely on the table, that's solid quali points, and then he drops back to anywhere from P11 to P13, which is a great chance to gain positions and get a good score in the race, even if he can't get that far. I think even if he drops down, you know, he starts P13, P12, P11, he's going to end up ahead of Checo. So I think the worst you're looking at Leclerc from a recovery drive standpoint is P7. And depending on the pace of the Mercedes and other things happening on track, right, I could definitely see Leclerc getting up higher to P6, P5. And that's when we're starting to talk about proper points here. So I think Leclerc is a fantastic option. I'm definitely looking to switch to Leclerc for this weekend, specifically for this, and I might even hand in my 2x, even if I decide to keep Norris. So going back to my team then, how do I get Leclerc in? How do I get Albon in? Do I get Albon in, or do I just stick with Franco Colapinto and Bottas? And who will my final driver, C-tier driver, be? Well, I have 3 free transfers. I'm not looking to do a -10. So the 3 free transfers is all I have. But I will say, if you have a wild card remaining, you know, I'm not going to talk too much about the chips remaining. If you have final fix, you just look at qualifying, see what happens, go for that. If you have 3x or limitless, just use that on whatever you think is the best, right? But the one thing is that if you have wild card remaining, I think it could be actually very useful here, specifically to restructure your team, right? Because if you're sitting on a team such as mine, with a wild card, you can do quite a bit. I'm just going to show you this as an example because it's something I was eyeing up, but I, you know, not going to be able to do based on the fact that it would cost me a -10, right? So this is going to assume that you do not want Valtteri Bottas and you actually want to go for the punt on Albon. And then here with 13.6 million, you can fit someone like a Nico Hülkenberg in, right? So this would be a pretty solid team to switch to, and it's something I could see myself doing. But considering I'm stuck on just my 3 free transfers, I have to rethink it slightly. My number one thing is that I want Leclerc. The question is, do I sell Piastri or Lando? Now, let me go through the 2 different paths, because that's my main thing. I want to get Leclerc in. I'm not going to be, you know, finishing this without having Leclerc in my team. But that is, Leclerc is a lock. I will say that unless something crazy happens in FP3 or whatever. Right now, Leclerc looks like a lock for me. So it's just a question of, do I sell Norris or do I sell Piastri? Let me talk you through the different variants, right? So if I sell Piastri, you know, I would put the DRS boost on Leclerc, even if it was Norris here. Selling Piastri to Leclerc maxes out my budget almost completely, as you can see, which leaves me with very little other options to do. So therefore, this is quite a simple one. The one I would change is Yuki Tsunoda. Well, who would I change Yuki Tsunoda to? Well, after the price drop, now Nico Hülkenberg is actually lower than Yuki in price, meaning I can switch Yuki to Nico. And Nico and Haas does look fast, and if there's ever time for K-Mag to play bowling and give Hülkenberg the podium that he so rightfully deserves after all this time, I think now would be the time to do so. So I do really like the prospect of owning Nico Hülkenberg for this race. He looked fast in practice. The Haas has been fast all year. Nico Hülkenberg has been the best of the rest pretty much all season consistently. He's consistently also beating Checo at this point. I know he's had, you know, his big stinkers in crashes, right? But when he's not had those crashes, you can see the points he's pulling in. He's only had a few, but you know, the stinkers he's had have been big. I'm not saying that's not the case, right? -42 in Brazil, -32 in Monaco, obviously really big, but like, just look at the points he scored. He really has a very high ceiling for what he can do compared to someone like a K-Mag. Like, K-Mag's obviously really good. I know he got 21 points in Qatar, but if you look at K-Mag's points, like, K-Mag doesn't really reach the highs that Hülkenberg gets, but he's consistently around the 10 pointers, which is why he's been so good this year. But again, he's 14.3 million after that 1 million price rise. I'm not touching that asset, especially not when he can finish the season by doing something really funny. And you know what's also good? If K-Mag decides to play some bowling and crash into multiple cars to give Hülkenberg, you know, a clean run through to P3, Leclerc might not be in that specific bowling area, considering he's starting in, you know, P13 or something like that. So I'm just saying, if Kevin decides to do some bowling, Leclerc will be there. Or he won't be one of the pins, he will be the second bowling ball. He will be like, I don't know how to follow through with this analogy, but you get what I'm trying to say. So, very, very simple. If I decide to sell Piastri to Leclerc, Yuki to Hulkenberg, call it a day, bing, bang, boom, probably put the 2x on Leclerc. It gets a bit more difficult if I decide to keep Piastri and sell Norris. Now, the reason for that is because selling Lando to Leclerc opens up a bit of budget. And with budget, you can do some exciting things. Number one, you can sell both Yuki and Bottas and get Albon in here, right? So if I decide to trust Albon and, you know, the Williams grid penalty, that's where I can actually get Alex Albon in there. So I think still the main asset I do want in the C tier region is Nico. I don't think K-Mag's getting driver of the day, because he has to do something really, really good to get driver of the day. I know it's his last race as well, but he's not as well liked as Bottas. I think out of the drivers that are out of a seat next year, that are unemployed, I know K-Mag has a contract with BMW for WEC or the other one. So I can't think of the name right now. But I do think the one driver out of his seat that's likely to get driver today is Bottas. So I'm not so sure I want to do the Bottas. I want to sell Bottas. I want to maybe still hedge my bets on him getting that driver of the day. The last thing that really complicates things is if I sell both McLaren drivers. Now, this is a crazy gambit, because here I get both Leclerc and Sainz and decide to go for the 3x, for the triple Ferrari, right? And in this case, I can actually afford Kevin Magnussen if I decide to do it. In this case, I'm really hedging my bets because I have K-Mag, I have Bottas. If Ferrari are fast and Leclerc is starting far back, will Sainz be able to, you know, get on the podium? Definitely. Be able to win? Perhaps. So it is very tempting to have Sainz in there. I do think Sainz P1 gets driver of the day. He is very popular. And I will spend a moment to talk about driver of the day, because I do think there are a couple of drivers that I don't think will get driver of the day if they win. And they're Max, George, and Lando, right? I think those three aren't as popular anymore. So I don't think they'll get driver of the day unless, you know, the rest of the race is like completely dull with nothing happening. But I fail to see how that would be the case, especially considering like Leclerc is starting further back. A recovery drive for Leclerc, if there's a boring winner, right? Leclerc could snap up driver of the day just from a P5. Or in the case where it's a boring race and just, you know, Max Verstappen leads from, you know, the entire race, starts pole to victory, you know, he wins again. They might just give it to Bottas, and by they I mean, you know, the general public, if the race is boring, especially if Bottas is, you know, still on track and it's like P11 or P12, you know, the upper echelons of not getting points. I could see Bottas, you know, snapping up the driver of the day in a boring race. Whereas someone like Leclerc, especially considering he would have to drive up 10 positions at minimum, Sainz, who's out of Ferrari, who could go and win it, Hamilton, who's leaving Mercedes, and Piastri, who's just everyone's little golden boy. If any of those win the race, I do think they are at least prime candidates for getting driver of the day over someone like a Bottas or K-Mag. So I haven't fully decided what to do yet. I do really like this. I'm just scared for K-Mag, right? But I don't think K-Mag is gonna go bowling, because he probably wants to end his F1 career on a high. Now, there's every opportunity that he could be back, especially considering, you know, his close ties to Cadillac in 2026. But that's a wait and see. This could be the last time we see K-Mag in Formula 1. So I don't think he wants to go out by playing bowling. That being said, I do think Hulk is a slightly better option, but I've also not owned K-Mag all year and I've completely missed like the best asset in the game. He's gone from 6.2 million to 14.3, which is absolutely crazy. So I still haven't decided. The only way to get K-Mag is to go with a triple Ferrari, which I don't dislike, by the way. Especially considering I'm a Ferrari fan and I'm secretly hoping that the McLaren have a double DNF and Ferrari take the championship. But you know, a man can dream. Quick final chat if you're still here with me. I do want to talk about Jack Doohan. I think Jack Doohan comes in slightly too expensive to consider. He is also a driver of the day candidate, especially if he gets points and the winner is one of the aforementioned boring winners. I do think Jack Doohan could get points, could get driver of the day if he finishes the race in the points. So I don't think Jack Doohan is a bad option at all, especially if you're slightly richer than me, right? Because at that point, you know, I can't really do... right, again, I'm stuck on 3 transfers, but even if I could do 4 transfers, right, I can't get Liam Lawson or Jack Doohan in here at 10.9 million. I wouldn't get Liam Lawson. Obviously, it would be Jack Doohan. At 10.9 million, I'm 0.5 million away from it. But if you have your wild card, or if you already have one of the Ferrari drivers and you are 0.5 million more, you know, 0.5 million richer than me, I do think Doohan is a better option than Bottas. Now, I know I've just talked up Bottas and getting driver of the day and all of that good stuff. But again, like, I still think we need a boring winner and Bottas to not be completely lost for him to actually get driver of the day. Unless he does a Ricardo and is completely lost, but he gets fastest lap. In that case, you know, he's on for a 25-pointer. But I do think Jack Doohan is a better option than Valtteri Bottas, and I do think if you can afford something like this, or, you know, if you want to get, if you're even, you know, way richer than I am and have a way higher budget and can get, you know, you're running Norris and Leclerc with Nico and Colapinto, and I still think Colapinto is a fantastic option, and I'm not going to sell him whatsoever, especially with that 5 penalty. So I would keep Colapinto over Bottas, but you know, I could. You know, if I had Bottas in here and 4 transfers, I couldn't get Jack Doohan. I'm still 0.2 million away. So for me, Jack Doohan is a non-option, specifically just because like he's at an awkward price point for me personally, right? Because I'm getting Leclerc in, and then I'm stuck here with Yuki Tsunoda, which I'm going to downgrade, but I would always get Nico over someone like a Jack Doohan, right? Because like obviously I can just get Jack Doohan here. But that feels like a waste when I could get Hulkenberg, you know? I think if I was poorer, so if you're watching this and you're slightly poorer than I and you want to get Leclerc in for Piastri, but you're at like 131 million-ish, right? At that point, Jack Doohan could be an option, right? You probably wouldn't... You say you had someone like a... Oh, I don't know. What should we say? Say you had like a Shogun you in here, and then you had Piastri. Say like this was your team, and you sell Leclerc here. I do think going up to Jack Doohan here would be an option. Yes, so you would have to be at what, 131 point something million. I do think this could be an option. Again, if you're, you know, not in the Norris and like even more so poorer, right? Like you have even less money than that, and you're not on a Norris strategy, and you do get like Leclerc plus Carlos Sainz. I mean, this team you can get with what, 128 million budget. So I do think there are there are a lot of scenarios where Jack Doohan is an option for you. For me specifically, and I hope I've illustrated this well enough, like he's just not an option, right? Because I would always get Hulkenberg above, and I'm never rich enough to upgrade Valtteri Bottas or Colapinto to Jack Doohan, unless I completely upend my team and sell like the McLaren constructor, which I don't think I'm doing. So, with that said, I cannot wait for the deadline stream tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching throughout this year. If you have been watching throughout this year, or if it's your first time here and you've watched this entire video, why not subscribe? It would mean a ton. I have a lot of content coming out in the off season, so don't you worry. I will not go, radio silent here. Post season content will be here. I'll try to get some interviews going. We'll talk the survey. We'll talk what's coming. We'll talk, and then obviously once we get into 2025, a bunch of guides will be dropping, which I haven't really done before. So I'm excited to dip my toes into that. I've done some guides, but that was earlier in the season, and obviously if you scroll back on my page, my first video ever was my team selection video, like a day before the start of this year. So what a year it's been. My goal obviously is to finish inside the top 10k. I just need a good weekend to do it. No DNFs, and I think I can pull it off. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow, deadline stream. Don't miss it. Goodbye.